I see it being such a huge, huge problem where when guys come to me and I see how many alcoholic drinks they're drinking per week, I don't even have to read the rest of the questionnaire to say you're going to be having side effects with your treatment. So I've seen that you've done videos explaining how weed and alcohol are just completely derailing not just bodybuilding progress, but all health progress in general. Can you explain to the guys in your way and in your words why you can't smoke weed regularly and drink alcohol regularly and be fit, healthy, and feel
In in a lot of America, you can still be considered healthy, but you're actively taking poison. That alcohol is fucking poison. Period. It is the worst shit you could do. You're better off snorting coke and shooting heroin than doing alcohol, assuming that it's sterile needle practices and it's pure cocaine in a reasonable amount and it's pure heroin in a reasonable amount, not laced with fentanyl, not like you're used to 20% pure and then you get slipped some pure stuff and you overdose. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about the actual medical physiological changes that occur from cocaine and from heroin are way better than the shit that happens on alcohol. As far as weed goes, the worst thing about weed is that you're smoking. That edibles or vaping, in theory, if there's not the flavoring agents, it causes popcorn lung. In theory, that's not as bad, but the studies showed that marijuana delays reaction times in pilots for up to 3 weeks after they use it once. Also, marijuana causes something similar to SHBG to be released, which mops up testosterone and basically lowers your testosterone effective androgen levels, which makes you relative estrogen dominant. So, like 30 years ago, girls didn't like sleeping with dudes who smoked weed because they thought that they had lower sex drives, that girls avoided dudes that smoked weed. It was considered like, you smokes weeds and plays video games and eats pizzas and drinks Mountain Dew, he's going to be bad in bed. Versus the guy who doesn't smoke weed, doesn't drink, lifts weights and exercises, then he's going to be better in bed. So girls gravitated towards physically fit dudes because they wanted a good lay. That, I don't know what the fuck they make their criteria based on now with dad bods and feelings and all that shit. But I mean, the point is before all of the gender disruption that's occurred in the last 10 years, girls were pretty straightforward and normal. And it was just like, oh, that dude's hot, I want to fuck him. And then they would. And then it's like, it made it simple. It's like, get hot. Money's okay, but get as hot as you can, and girls will want to fuck you. And then you don't have to do anything. You just have to smile, say yeah, and talk and answer questions or ask them questions, and shit just worked out. Now I have no fucking idea what the girls are looking for. They're crazy. But that used to be simple, that get them off, they come back for more. And that was all there was to it. So why on earth would you take drugs that make you worse in bed? Why? And it's like, well, I'm never going to get laid anyway because I'm ugly and girls don't like me. It's like, okay, but you're going to be better at video games if you're not high on weed. Everything you do is better if you're not on weed. You feel better on weed until you're dependent on it. Now you need to smoke weed just to feel normal. Now you roll out of bed, smoke weed, you're high for 10 minutes, and then you have to smoke weed every 30 minutes for the whole day just to feel normal. And you're exhausted and you have something called amotivational syndrome and you accomplish nothing. Now, with the alcohol thing, the alcohol ties up your liver. It's got to use alcohol dehydrogenase. The alcohol dehydrogenase uses water, so it's dehydrating you constantly. And then, more importantly, it creates antifreeze, which is a toxin. And then your body has to burn the alcohol before it can burn fat. So, alcohol completely derails any goals in athletics or physique. Now you're going to be like, well, there's people like Michael Phelps that got 8 gold medals and he smoked weed. Right. And he would have gotten 9 if he didn't. It's like the same thing that like Mike Israel said is like maybe Ronnie Coleman would have gotten 9 Mr. Olympias if he went deeper on his squats. It's like you can point at the 1 in a billion person who's successful despite a bad behavior and say, look, but you can't correlate the bad behavior with a positive outcome, nor can you attribute a positive outcome to a bad behavior. When, okay, we've got the survivorship bias, and we got Michael Phelps smoked weed, got 8 gold medals. It's like, right. And there's 3,999,999,999 guys who didn't get gold medals. And of those, 1 billion of them smoke weed. that that despite having this one handicap, he's still the greatest of all time. But that doesn't mean the handicap made him better. The dude had to eat 12,000 calories worth of pasta a day. He did it by giving himself the munchies with weed. So there's more factors involved. This is something that scientists don't seem to understand is real life. Because when someone goes into academia, the way that they get a PhD is they know that if they left that university, they wouldn't be able to survive in the business world. So they have to stay in school and just go back. Like, oh, I got my 4-year degree, but I'm not ready to work. Mommy and daddy are just going to pay for me to get another degree. And then they get a master's degree. Then they're like, oh, I don't really feel like working. I'm just going to stay in school and have mommy and daddy get me another degree. And then they get a PhD. And then, I mean, some of those people work, but like not a lot. And then eventually they have no choice. So what do? Well, they got a PhD. So now they teach college. And now they're going to teach other people how to get this useless piece of paper that helps them do nothing. And so that's basically how academia is. It's a bunch of snobs that have imposter syndrome. They know they're not actually worldly or functional adults, but they are smart in their field. So they constantly try to make other people in their field look stupid so that they can feel better about themselves. And then that's all academia is. And then they take this grant money and they fund these studies that are there to push their narrative. Like they've got an idea of what outcome they want. So they construct the method section to get the outcome they're looking for. They're not applying real scientific theory, which is you have a hypothesis, you try to prove the null hypothesis, you try to prove yourself wrong every fucking way possible. And if you can't prove yourself wrong, you have no choice but to be right. So I'm not immune to this. What I do is I pay a researcher to watch my videos and read the stuff I do and try to prove me wrong. I actually pay someone to go through and try to prove me wrong all the time. And he's super brilliant with writing prompts for AI. So he's a genius whose special genius ability is getting the most out of AI. And then him and AI programs work on trying to prove me wrong. And most of the time, it's like I'm 95% right. And the 5% of the time I'm wrong is some nuance. Like, well, in this population, in this country, they have this genetic mutation where this might not happen. It's like, but they're not the people watching the video. So fuck them. It doesn't really matter. So like there's like a coward's way out. One of the coward way out is to say, well, maybe Masteron isn't an AI and maybe Primo's an AI in some people, but in some people it's reversed. And it's like, but what is some people? The way that they worded it makes it sound like it's a 50-50 thing. It ain't a 50-50 thing. It's like a 90-10 thing or a 95-5 thing. We don't have to address outliers. We don't need that level of nuance. That once you put a blanket statement down, like everybody's different and you might have a weird response. Some people take benzos and get anxiety. That doesn't mean that we should label like may cause anxiety on every anti-anxiety med. I mean, there's a certain shot that should have said may cause actual death, but that's neither here nor there. But we don't have to say that's like saying on a painkiller may cause increased pain. Well, then no one's going to buy it, and it's not even relevant. It's not even a large percentage of the population. So you got like a tiny fraction of people that lose their hair from Masteron because they're adding Masteron. They're not replacing test with Masteron. They're adding Masteron to a super overloaded test cycle, and they're doing the test wrong. They're using a lot of tests twice a week or 3 times a week. So their SHBG is high and it's holding a ton of DHT. Then they add mass to the cycle. The mass binds to the SHBG, bumps the DHT off. All the DHT goes to their hair because they're taking finasteride, which blocks the prostate converting test to DHT, but it doesn't block the hair from converting test to DHT. And then they start losing their hair. And then they always say the same thing. It's like, oh, when I'm taking a shower, there's a handful of hair in my hand. It's filling my trash can. It's always word for word that exact story because they're lying. They basically saw this myth, this urban legend online. So they dramatize it because they're pussies. When the fuck else do you touch your hair? You only touch your hair in the shower. So obviously, if you're going to have any hair in your hands, it's in the shower. And you didn't start looking at your hand, counting the hairs until you took the master on. So you're having a hypochondriacal perception of a response.
Yeah.
And that's all it
That's
is you've
noticeably
got a
big.
little bit of hair shedding, and you've got a hypochondriacal response where you're now hyper focused on the hair in your hands when you're taking a shower because you heard this story on the internet and you're only looking because you're on Masteron, and that would only happen if you're using too much test and you're taking it infrequently, but everyone uses too much test and everyone takes it infrequently.